Now, would you buy a used car from Arnold Schwarzenegger, or better yet, would you buy a used car from little Arnold Schwarzenegger?
And Trump realizes he might have to show his financial record, so he is not going to run for president.
And once again, on behalf of the marvelous people at Flood Brothers Disposal Service, we welcome you to a Culture Clash. I, of course, am Chet Kopic, along with my little tart,
Catherine Saxon.
All right, Arnold Schwarzenegger. First of all, you think he's hot, right?
No. Not then.
Why don't
not
you
now.
say what you really mean?
No, I don't. I'm not really into that. But I'm feeling really bad for Maria this morning. A decade goes by.
She's got plenty of dough.
You know, I think that it's a little bit more than the dough. There might be a little bit of emotional distress attached to this. But, you know.
Hey, first of all, Maria's a hot babe. Who's to say she hasn't had a boy toy for the last 10 years?
You know, okay, of course there could be equal infidelity, but at this point we don't know that. So I'm going to go with the fact that he cheated on his wife with the housekeeper, and it's been a decade that she hasn't known this, and he has an illegitimate child. I mean,
like
what?
That line. Stop by Luna Carpeting. Enjoy our equal infidelity. Hey, I'm just saying, listen. Henry Kissinger, who you don't know a darn thing about, right? He was the Secretary of State during the Richard Nixon White House.
Yeah, wasn't he like 5'6", kind of had bad hair like some of the...
He was German. He looked like a bug. He looked like an amoeba.
Right.
But he always had lots of really hot young babes.
I was going to ask, why is that?
Well, because he was once asked, Henry, how do you wind up with all these very, very intriguing and hot young ladies? And he said,
attractive, right?
Power is a remarkable aphrodisiac. Right?
Okay. So you're saying that's why the housekeeper couldn't resist Arnold? Is that what this is?
No, not necessarily.
Where are you going?
I think the housekeeper probably came on to Arnold.
Okay. I don't know how it actually went down, but what is with men and housekeepers? I mean, this is a trend that you see happening a lot, that we're talking about at least twice today on this show.
Well, for example, in the case of Dominic Strauss-Kahn, the most important financier in the world,
right,
who's under arrest in New York right now, I think there is this thing about people when they're on the road, guys when they're on the road, the animal instinct comes out, the I'm away from the wife avenue angle comes out. What I'm basically saying is men are really whores.
You heard it here first. Okay, so is that a justification?
I'd like to say something that, that Father Flager would say, Hosanna, that sounds wonderful. But the fact is, guys are a little bit weird. But I mean,
weird,
so are
yes.
women.
The housekeeper walks.
Here is the great challenge. I mean, I know women who are every bit as slutty as men are.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yes, sure. There's slutty women and men. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We're basically a slutty society.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Moving right along.
Chicago topics. Emmanuel last Saturday kicked off his inauguration with the festivity with seeing the band Chicago. Only about 200 people came out to this event because it was pouring rain.
It was downpour.
So he is standing there with his family, all in ponchos, and I'm thinking, obviously there was a residency issue, but to me, this kind of proved that he's a true Chicagoan. He's standing out there with his whole family in ponchos, rooting on, an iconic Chicago band.
Well, what's kind of interesting is, I don't want to say I go back in time, but I saw Chicago when they used to play on North State Street at a place called Barnaby's, and they were called The Big Thing before they were Chicago.
Okay.
And that goes back a mere 42 years.
Wow.
And they were fantastic.
One
of the great rock bands of all time. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, check me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think Chicago is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is criminal. Absolutely criminal.
I don't know. How long do they have to keep going until they're able to get into the Hall of Fame?
The Hall of Fame is very, very political. I mean, why are the Ramones in the Hall of Fame and Chicago's not in the Hall of Fame?
I'm not the person to be asking that question to. All right, so Trump announces live that he's going to focus on more important things like Celebrity Apprentice versus running for presidency. Which, I mean, obviously this was just all to create some sort of hype for himself and his shows. But I just think that this is hilarious. Obviously, he can't really handle the pressure, and so he can't handle the heat. Get out of the kitchen.
Well, number one, he couldn't raise, obviously couldn't raise the revenues to mount a bona fide candidacy, number one.
Right.
Number two, right from day one, I never thought that Trump's so-called bid for the White House had even the slightest degree of legitimacy. Donald Trump is first
The Tea Party was
and
actually
foremost
supporting him very much so.
a remarkable self-promoter.
Yes.
Here is a guy who has laughed in the face of, what, four bankruptcies, and we're supposed to elect this guy as president. It was all a gag right from the get-go. And, you know, shame on the media for really buying into Donald Trump as being a bona fide candidate for the most important office in the free world.
No, that's actually a good point. It would be interesting if we just didn't give this, any weight whatsoever. But he maintained in his speech that he would have won the Republican primary and he would have won the general election. But he has to focus on Celebrity Apprentice in the private sector.
You're in Carmichael's restaurant tonight.
Ooh.
You're sipping on a dirty martini.
Okay.
Donald Trump
Probably a
walks
Cosmo,
up,
but all right.
Cosmo, that means you know what, you love Sex in the City, right?
No, I like Cosmos.
All right, so anyway, whatever the case may be, a Cosmo or a dirty martini, and Donald Trump walks in, sits down right next to you with his power red tie and his ridiculous comb over, and says, I want to buy you dinner. I'm really attracted to you. What's your reaction?
I'd say let's have dinner. And that would be, I'd probably record our entire dinner conversation, and I would ask a million questions, and then I would shake his hand at the end. Say, last week we were talking about Newt Gingrich, and we got a little bit off on a tangent about, what constitutes sexual relations. But what I thought was interesting, we weren't able to touch on this, was that this guy has been married 3 times.
Yeah.
And the first marriage began with as an affair to his 27-year-old geometry teacher when he was still in high school, and he ended up marrying this woman. Then she got uterine cancer, and he divorced her. And his second wife then was diagnosed with MS, and she was quoted saying, I should have known that there was a problem before this happened, but then he divorced her as well. So what is with men and leaving their spouses when they become sick or ill, or this seems to be, I've heard about this several times.
Well, you can't joke about this one.
No, I'm not joking
And
whatsoever.
I wouldn't pretend to joke about this one. It's criminally tragic that
It's
someone like
gross.
Newt Gingrich would do that. And Newt Gingrich has basically been irrelevant in the political world for roughly a decade. But once again, I go back to my point that I made up top about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Would you buy a used car from Newt Gingrich? He's a tragic human being. He's a flawed human being.
Besides,
It's like it goes back to the point I think I might have made a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It just amazes me every time a politician winds up in the sack with some babe. The wife always stands by her man, like Governor Elliot Spitzer in New York, client number 9 down in Washington D.C., who always would get together with his favorite hooker, and he would leave his black over the calf socks on, which seems kind of weird in and of itself. I mean, just between you and I, you're in bed with Mr. Right, and you're really romping and stomping and going to town, and you note that he's wearing black over the calf socks. What's your first reaction?
I wouldn't have got into the bed in the first place. That's a little weird.
If I were in your position, my first reaction would be, I'm running like hell. I'm out of here.
Yes. All right, so he was actually quoted by saying that there's no question at times in my life I was driven by how passionately I felt about this country, that I worked far too hard and things happened in my life that were not appropriate. That's your justification for those? You leave 2 wives you've been married 3 times when they're diagnosed with some sort of disease. I mean, that to me is just, my heart goes out to those women. And what's ironic about this entire thing is that that's probably why he won't even be a legitimate candidate for presidency. I mean, he was on Meet the Press and was talking about how he agreed with the individual mandate, which is hypocritical to what he stands for entirely. I don't think he has any idea what he's talking about.
I want to bring up something very important.
Okay.
we're going to have a new segment on the show every week, or as long as we last, which might be till
The end of today.
Thursday. Today, my pick hit for our audience is Danger, Death, and the Rush of Wrestling, The Road Warriors. The Road Warriors, authored by Joe Laurinaitis, who wrestled as the Animal with Hawk in the Legion of Doom.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Here, read this book, and we're going to have a quiz next Tuesday.
I can't. Well, thank you so much for this.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Not
Anything on your mind?
You know, I just want to leave it on that note, actually.
All right. We thank you for joining us here on Culture Clash. I want to thank the marvelous people at Flood Brothers Disposal Service. I'm Chet Kopic, along with this gorgeous little tart.
Catherine Saxon.
And Willie.
Not the housekeeper.
Damn, just my luck. Catch you next time around. So long, everybody.